This is how to stop wasting money on clothes that you never wear for once and for all. After working in the fashion industry my entire career and also being on my own personal style journey literally forever, I have learned that good style is often built on the backs of costly mistakes. You see something you like, you buy it without really thinking, and now it's 3 years later, tags are still on, and it's sitting in the back of your closet collecting dust. You know you should try to wear it, but every single time you think about it, it feels like a burden. It's not your style anymore, or maybe it wasn't even in the first place, or maybe you just have nothing to wear with it. Whatever the case may be, just know that you're not alone, and I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks to stop wasting your money on clothes that you will never wear. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more content on how to be a responsible shopper. I also have some freebies for you guys in the description box down below. I have an outfit formula tracker, a weekly outfit planner, as well as a monthly purchase tracker. So if those are of interest to you, if they will serve you well, you can download them in the description box down below. And let's just get right into it. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you what to actually do with the clothes that are currently sitting in your closet that you're never ever gonna wear. We're also gonna talk about why we are so accustomed to spending and wasting our money on clothes that we never wear. And then for the main event, I will be giving you tips on how you can avoid this moving forward. As always, timestamps are below if you want to skip to a specific section. So first, let's talk about what to do with the items that are currently in your closet that you never wear. First things first, I know firsthand that there is a lot of guilt when it comes to spending money on items and then never putting them to use. And I want you to allow yourself to release that guilt. I want you to say to yourself that I can't change the past, but I can definitely shape my future moving forward. I know that these feelings can be a little bit difficult to process, but I want you to understand that you are here, you are putting in the work to be better, and I personally think that's quite admirable. As for the physical clothes themselves, you have 3 options for what you can do with them. First, if you are cool with them hanging out around for a little bit longer, you can sell them on platforms like Mercari, Depop, Poshmark, even ThredUp, which I find doesn't pay very well, but if you're trying to just make a few bucks and get them out of your closet, it is a good option. The other option is to donate them at your local thrift store, your local women's shelter, or you can even bring them to a consignment shop, which is definitely a little bit more of a tedious process, but you make some cash with it and it's out of sight, so out of mind, you don't have to worry about it. Now the third option is to put it in storage. Now I do think this is a really great option, especially if you are on the fence about an item. For example, if you look at an item in your closet and you are like, absolutely not, like never gonna happen, don't know why I bought it, that's definitely a good sign to either sell it or donate it. But if you look at something and you're like, I still like it, I just don't really know where to wear it or what to wear it with, then storage might be a good option. Now, when I say store your items, I definitely don't mean put them in storage, forget about it, walk away forever kind of thing. It just means putting those items into a bin, putting them in your basement underneath your bed, and then revisiting them either 3 to 6 months to maybe even a year down the road. This is where it is crucial to set a reminder in your phone, because if you're anything like me, you'll forget about it. I've done this a few times and it's almost like shopping, because you sometimes forget what you have in there, at least I do. And I find that when you are away from an item for a while and then you go to pull it out of storage, there's often a pretty big indication whether you want to keep it or not. Like that feeling is definitely a little bit stronger once you've, had some time apart. So next I want to talk a little bit about why we actually waste our money on clothes that we never wear. It is definitely more than just an impulsive buying decision. Knowing the why is actually really important for you to understand and recognize certain behaviors within the fashion industry as a whole, as well as your own behaviors, so you can stop and say, okay, why am I actually buying this? The first and one of the biggest reasons why we waste our money on clothes that we never wear is because we are simply buying a dream that a brand is selling us. Now, this is just marketing. Like, it's nothing crazy, it's nothing revolutionary. My degree is in marketing and I spent years working in brand strategy within the fashion industry, so I very much understand selling the dream, and I've worked with a lot of major brands to help them figure out how to sell the dream. But when you come from it from the consumer side, it's really important to understand how to distinguish the aspiration that the brand or the product is selling you versus the actual practicality of the item in your life. It's basically about understanding how to avoid shopping for your fantasy self and instead shopping for the version of yourself that you know to be true and to be real within this moment. This happened to me a million times before I learned how to actually be a more intentional shopper. I would see a brand selling a certain storyline. It would of course give me some type of emotion or feeling where I would be like, ooh, I want that and I want it now. And then I would buy the clothes thinking that it would give me the same emotion or the same feeling that I felt when looking at the campaign or looking at it on the model. It sounds a little bit delusional, but that's just how marketing works. It is all just one big delusional campaign. Another huge reason why we waste our money on clothes that we never wear is because of the treat yourself mentality. I actually think that this is quite a fun mentality to have, but where the problem lies is when you actually abuse it. I believe that the treat yourself mentality should definitely be for celebration, not as a justified reason to buy something that is either out of your budget or out of your comfort zone. So I think that it's really important to learn the distinction between these two. This is definitely something that can get a little bit nuanced depending on the why and the how and the what or whatever, but I just found that it was something really toxic in my life that I had to basically unlearn and to help understand when it was actually appropriate to treat myself. And the last reason I'm gonna mention as to why we waste our money on clothes that we never wear is the emotional Band-Aid response. Now, I know that we have all been through something like this. You are not the best version of yourself at the moment. Maybe you're in your feelings, maybe you are a little stressed about something, and your brain is just on the hunt for that dopamine. And where do we often get it? Through shopping. I like to call this the emotional Band-Aid response because it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. You decide to shop to make yourself feel better. You find some items that give you that instant hit of dopamine that you are craving. You don't think through the purchases, and then you end up with items that just aren't realistic for your wardrobe and they just end up sitting there. And it didn't actually fix anything. Now, there are of course a million other reasons as to why we buy clothes that we never wear, but I find that these three reasons are some of the most prevalent within our society, as well as my own personal life before I learned how to be an actual intentional shopper. So now let's move on to some actionable tips that you can put into place to actually stop wasting money on clothes you never wear. So my first tip is to avoid browsing as a form of entertainment. I used to do this all the time. I would just be hanging out, bored, primarily at nighttime, and I would be like, well, let's see what is new at XYZ brand. And I found that it got me into a lot of trouble with spending my money on things that just sat in my closet. Now, I'm definitely not suggesting that you stop shopping altogether. I personally like to approach shopping when I know that there's a specific item that would fit well within my wardrobe. So, for example, a few weeks ago, I decided that I really wanted a tiered midi skirt. I sat on it for a few days and then I started a very intentional search on Google. I ended up finding one on Mercari, and honestly, I feel great about it. Like, even weeks, it's been actually a few months later, I still feel great about it. I've worn it a bunch, and it's because I saw an item that I liked, I thought about the place and the role it's gonna play in my wardrobe, and then I set the intention to find one that fits within my budget at a brand that I liked or whatever the case may be. And it worked out really, really nicely, especially because I was able to buy it secondhand. Now, when you have these moments of wanting to browse as a form of entertainment, I suggest you replace that with something else. Obviously, you can do things like pick up a book, watch some TV, go for a walk. Very simple and obvious things, of course, but I do think that the most important thing to avoid browsing as a form of entertainment is just sheer willpower. You have to have the willpower to tell yourself no. So if you do have a habit of shopping as a form of entertainment, I encourage you to try to find some other ways to entertain yourself that are just as satisfying. My next tip is to avoid buying anything on sale that you wouldn't pay full price for. This was my biggest pitfall when I was a shopaholic, like hands down. I felt like a good deal was the only reason I needed to validate a purchase. And this could not be further from the truth. So now I have to be very real with myself when I am looking to buy something that's super deeply discounted or just super cheap in general. And I have to ask myself, like, am I buying this because I actually like it? Or am I buying it because the price is unreal? Am I using the excuse that, well, if I end up not wearing it, it was only $5, so whatever? This is not how a responsible consumer shops. I also like to ask myself, is this something that I would pay full price for, or at least a reasonable price for? And again, if the answer is no, I just leave it. So obviously use your best judgment, but if you are somebody who gets that high from buying something that is really, really discounted, and then it ends up just sitting in your closet, it might be a good idea to reevaluate that little hit of dopamine. Okay, so those were some tips on the actual shopping process. Now let's talk about when you actually find an item and you wanna make sure that it's gonna have a place in your home and in your life. So I like to ask myself these 3 questions before I make any type of clothing purchase. The first is, am I able to create more than 5 versatile outfits with this item? The second is this something that is able to transition between at least 2 seasons? And the third question is this print or color or silhouette something that I wouldn't hesitate to repeat on a daily basis? If I answer yes to all 3 of these questions, I have no problem making the purchase. These are questions that are really good to ask just to make sure that the items you're purchasing will have a long lifespan in your closet, they will serve a purpose, and ultimately you'll be wearing the heck out of them because they're super cute and you love them. They won't be collecting dust, is what I'm trying to say. My next tip is to buy the item, not the idea of the item. So this kind of goes hand in hand with what I was talking about earlier when it comes to brand selling a dream. So what I used to do this most often with was going out clothes. Now, first of all, I have never really been somebody that goes out, but I've always had this desire to buy a lot of clothes for going out, even though I don't go out that often, just to make sure that I have a selection for the very, very few times a year that I do go out. It just didn't make any sense. It was essentially buying for this version of myself who pretty much for the most part doesn't exist to this day. So again, it's about recognizing your fantasy self versus your real self. And I have come to the conclusion that my life is very relaxed. I like to be at home, and my clothes reflect that. Now, I do have some advice for you if you are looking to have some clothes for your fantasy self or for just a version of yourself that maybe isn't fully formed yet. Rent your clothes. It is my favorite thing in the world. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know how obsessed I am with renting, especially from Nuuly. I will leave a link in the description box down below where you can get $30 off your first month. You're welcome. My last tip to stop wasting your money on clothes that you never wear is to wait to cut the tags off. This is something that changed my wardrobe and just my spending habits as a whole once I started doing it. I used to buy a bunch of clothes, try everything on, keep the items that I was really sure about as well as the ones that I wasn't sure about, rip the tags off, and then let those bad boys just sit in my closet collecting dust, begging to be worn. So what I do now is I don't cut the tags off until I actually wear the item. Now this takes some coordination for sure. You have to make sure you still have the receipt if it's something you bought in person, and you need to make sure that you set a reminder in your phone for when the return policy is going to expire. Preferably a few days before. I usually set it for 5 days before to make sure I can get back to the store or get back to the post office to send it back. So once I get that reminder on my phone, hey, few days left, have you worn this item? Do you feel like it's serving you well in your wardrobe? If the answer is no, back to the store it goes. And for this reason, I also never purchase anything that is final sale. I just think that final sale shopping is dangerous for multiple reasons. This is such a smart habit that is going to pay off both literally and figuratively in the long run. I also have a free printable purchase tracker that you guys can download in the description box. You can use it to track your monthly purchases, and there are also spaces for whether you kept the item or returned the item, as well as a little notes section where you can write down the return policy or whatever else you may need. All right, you guys, that is the end of the video. Leave a comment down below any tips that you have to avoid wasting money on clothes that you never wear. I would love to hear about it. As always, thank you so much for watching. I am so appreciative of your support, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.